Hello and welcome to Hexed Countered. My name's Joe. Today I'm going to be doing a gameplay video on the game Stalin's Triumph. This is from the Nations at War series from Lock and Load Publishing, designed by Sean Drulinger. And this one is part of the Platoon-level tactical series that I'm currently doing. This is the second game I am doing in the series. The first one was from the Panzer Grenadier series from Avalanche Press. This one will be followed by something from War Storm series, and also Platoon Commander Deluxe, as well as potentially the Tactical Combat series, and also the Fighting Formation series. So this is number 2 of definitely 4, but potentially 6 different game systems to look at that all do platoon level combat, and they're all going to be, at least the entries I'm going to be using, are all going to be based on the Eastern Front in the Second World War. So it will be Germany versus the Soviet Union. This one is from the Battle of Kursk, and it is Stalin's Triumph. As I mentioned, we will be doing the scenario, the bridge at Berezovy Log from July 11th, 1943. It reads July 11, 1943. The 11th and 10th Panzer Grenadier, along with elements of the 86th Pioneer, were ordered to take the bridge behind the tiny village of Berezovy Log. Supported by armor from the 33rd Panzer Regiment, the Grenadiers hoped to break through the stiff Soviet defensive and clear a path to Kursk. This is from Sean Drulinger, who is the designer of the game. We do have our Soviet order of battle, setup information here. German order of battle, there, setup information there. We're using map 8, which is right here. It's an 8-turn, 2 end-turn markers in the cup. I'll talk about that once we get into the gameplay. Our victory conditions will be that the Germans must control the bridge and control at least 2 road hexes on the southern side of the river. Any other result is a Soviet victory. Okay, so our special rules: on turn 1 only, both German formations, the 320th and 18th, are removed from the cup. The German player can activate either formation and conduct that formation's operations phase. Once the selected formation has completed its operations, the German player can activate the remaining formation and conduct its operation phase. At the end of the turn, return the formation markers into the cup as per Rule 3.3. Number 2 is the German recon plane, if activated in a turn and during the marker removal phase, must make a die roll to see if the plane returns to the cup for future turns. Roll 1d6 and add the turn number to the die roll. If the result is higher than a 7, the recon plane is removed for the rest of that scenario. Or the scenario, rather. Number 3, all half hexes on the map are playable. All right. So I'm going to get this set up, and then we'll look at the gameplay started so you can get a look at the game and how it plays. Okay, so before we actually get into gameplay, I wanted to talk about things that are special here for this version, I guess, of the Nations at War system, the Stalin's Triumph version. In the module and scenario booklet, you have various things that are specific to this one, and that doesn't mean they're not in the other ones as well, but they're not, I guess, part of the core system. One of these would be trenches. So this is a trench counter. As you can see, it has 2+2s on it. It gives a +2 defensive save for infantry and anti-tank guns. So not tanks, but, infantry stuff. And they can only be placed in clear, hill, or depression hexes. And they also offer a +2 firepower combat bonus to each unit that is defending within a trench hex. So only defending, not attacking. We have 3 of these for this particular scenario. Oops. And we need to put them out. Now, Soviets have to deploy, here's hex row K. They have to deploy or set up on the eastern side. North is this way. So they have to deploy on the eastern side here. Here's the bridge that is the main objective of the scenario. The Germans have to take the bridge and also capture or control 2 of the road hexes. It says to the south of the bridge, but I guess it's really east. For our trenches, they can only be set up in depression, clear, and hill hexes. So as far as this particular map, map 8, we only have really clear that would be applicable here. We do have the town here. So let's put one here. And we'll put one north as well. Maybe one here. Now we also have 2 mines for the Soviets. So the way the mines work, I'll get into that when I use them, I think. But essentially what they do is they let the player declare that there are mines in a specific hex as an enemy unit moves into it, and that basically results in the unit being attacked by the mines. There's a little bit more to it as far as clearing them and all that stuff. The Germans do have some pioneers, which will help with that kind of thing, and we'll get into all of that stuff in a little bit. So other things for setup here, we have to deploy our forces now. Now, one thing about this game is that you have formations, and I believe I mentioned this in the first look, but just to kind of briefly mention it again. So this is a Soviet formation, the 3rd tank, and you can see it has a yellow band on it. Units that would be under that one would also have a yellow band, as you can see here on this T-34. You see the yellow band there. That indicates that this is part of the 3rd tank. You can also see there that it says 3rd tank on the counter. Now, this is a pretty small text, harder for people with, older eyes, shall we say. So basically, in talking about what all the numbers and stuff mean, I didn't really go into this in the video. So up here in the upper left, we have the armor piercing attack stuff. So you have the first number, the first 5 is the range. The 3 is the firepower, which basically equates to the number of dice you roll on an attack. And the 3rd number is the to hit number. So that would be, you would need a 5 or a 6 basically to hit. Same thing with the soft or HE firepower here at the bottom. Range is 3, firepower is 2 dice, and 6 to hit number. The 5 in the middle is its movement points. The 2-4 is its assault rating. And up top we have the armor rating of 2, 5 plus. And we'll talk about, all this stuff when we get into the mechanics of actually fighting. But that's basically how the counters are laid out. You do get defensive bonuses. The way defensive bonuses work is you get an additional die to roll, a saving die basically. You can see a hill gives you plus 1d6 if attacked from ground level. So normally soft units, right? You have soft targets, hard targets in this game. Soft targets obviously would be infantry. Hard targets would be things like armored fighting vehicles, of course. So soft targets do not have any defensive capability. They don't have any armor, right? Basically is what it boils down to. But a soft target on a hill would get to roll 1 die because they have defensive benefit from their terrain. So that's how that works. There is a disclaimer in this game at the very beginning of the manual. Right here. It says, Nations at War at its core is a game, and in no way is it an accurate simulation of platoon warfare. The game is centered on fun, but provides enough depth to model combat between the forces of World War II. So that, in a nutshell, is the focus of the game. The game is not trying to be a simulation of platoon-level combat. It is a game first. This is a war game that has reasonable complexity and does a reasonable job with fidelity without getting overburdened with, mechanics and stuff to really simulate platoon-level combat. So you need to keep that in mind depending on what your preferences are for how you play your war games or what kind of war games you want to play, that this one is not. And honestly, most of the games I'm going to be looking at in this series fall into this same sort of category. They're games first and, to varying levels, less or more simulation based. So with that disclaimer out of the way, I'm going to pause here to do the setup. Okay, so one last thing to discuss here. We have the chits that I showed you, the formation chits, and they'll go in this cup right here. You also have the option to use cards. Now, the reason I am not going to use the cards here is that we have basically 5 formations. And that's a decent number, and you can use the cards, but you're looking at 5 cards plus the 2 cards for the end turns, plus 1 card for the German scout plane. I guess that's 8. So I could use the cards or I could use the counters. So here are the counters as was mentioned earlier. So we have the Germans, the 18th Panzer, the 320th Infantry rather, 2 end turn markers, a designated formation for the Germans, which allows them to basically have like an extra formation to determine which one they want to activate. Then we have three Russians rather. We have the 3rd tank that we saw before, the 31st tank, and the 71st Guards Infantry. Now, we put all of these into the cup, but we do have a special rule for the Germans in that these 2 guys right here get an automatic activation to start off with. So they're going to not go in the cup initially. So those guys go in the cup, we shake it up, and we'll draw them out. But these 2 actually start active. Oh, and I forgot the scout plane. So here's the scout plane. This goes in the cup as well. Now, before, it says in the rules, before you put the scout plane in, you roll the die to see if it will return in a future turn. So to do that, we roll 1 die, 1d6. So we'll roll the white guy here, and we get a 4. Now, German planes get a 4 to 6 to return. Soviets get a 5 or 6 return. So that actually means that this guy here, once he's activated this turn, he goes back in the cup afterwards and can return in turn number 2. We do have a turn track, and I put the fate counters on the turn track to kind of keep track of those. They also on there in this shot, you can also see in the corner, you can see the what you can do with your fate points and how much the cost is. And then next to that, you have formation cards if you're using the cards. And above that in the middle, you have your casualty tracker where you can put dead units. So you throw your dead units in there, and that in some scenarios you might be wanting to know exactly how many units were killed to keep track of that for scorekeeping purposes, for victory points, etc., etc. So the Germans in this scenario will enter from the west side of the board through hex row A. They can start anywhere from A1 through A11 inclusive according to the scenario rules, so that's what we'll do. So the first step is to try to activate your unit. So up here you can see we have an HQ with a green band. That would be the 320th Infantry. Then down here we have an HQ with a purple band. That is the 18th Panzer. Those are our 2 main formations. The 320th also has a couple of Pioneer units that are attached, as well as a Stug 3. The Pioneers also have the unit play smoke capability, so we may have to have chances to lay some smoke, and here's a smoke counter. You will also get to see some ops complete and some disruptions and probably wrecks and all kinds of other things as well as we go on. Oh, there's also barrages. So here's a barrage counter. And for this scenario, the Germans have 3 fire missions, HE, with a firepower of 3 and a 2-hit number of 4. And on the Soviet side, they have 1 fire mission, also firepower 3, 2-hit number 4. And so we will see that in action. Now, I didn't put the concealed markers out, but in theory, all of these here are concealed because they are in, at least the ones in the town are concealed. So here on the terrain effects chart, let me pull this guy in again. Here in the terrain effects chart, you can see a concealment column. And you can see concealment is woods, wooded hill, city. So that would be these guys. And then yes for soft targets and cultivated. Rough is yes. And depression is yes. So depression is basically a hole. And then on the counter side, you can see anti-tank ditch will conceal soft targets, so infantry, and wrecks will also be concealment, but the other stuff won't. So that is how that works. I didn't really talk about HQ units, but here if we look at the HQ here, Okay, so this is the 71st Guards Infantry, and you can see the little lightning bolt here in the corner with a 4. That's its command range. And I'll talk about the other ratings on that in a moment. But if I put it here, his range is 4. So anybody with a green band, which is this one and this one, just needs to be within 4. We also have a commissar here, and I'll talk about that as well. But you go 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is in range. Our HQ here for the 31st tank is the blue band. They also are in range, these two here. That's a small one. It's got 3 T-70 platoons, one of which is reduced. Then we have the 3rd tank, which is HQ'd over here in the woods. So I'm using this as kind of my counterattack setup, maybe, or last line of defense, depending on how things go here in the town. Without further ado, let's get this thing rolling. Okay, so I made a slight adjustment here to the Soviet setup. I moved a trench here because I have one here, here, and here. So I had these two units stacked with this unit here in the city. I decided to move them out, put them in a trench, thinking the Germans are going to come this way. Basically, I may have mentioned the German recon plane. And the rule for that is actually a special rule for this scenario. There are rules, and I mentioned the rule, if I mentioned it, and I think I did, was that German recon planes will return on a 4 to 6. In this particular scenario, the German recon plane, if activated in a turn and during the marker removal phase, must make a die roll to see if the plane returns to the cup for future turns. Roll 1d6 and add the turn number to the die roll. So instead of doing it beforehand, I need to do it after I pull it. Well, actually before I put it back in the cup. When I go to check to put it back in the cup during the marker removal phase, that's when I will roll the die. And if I roll a 7 or more on turn 1, if I roll a 6 on turn 1, that would become a 7, and then that would mean it would not be eligible. On turn 2, it would need only a 5. Turn 3, it would need only a 4, and so on and so on. This is an 8-turn scenario, so I will lose the recon plane at some point. The Soviets do not have any anti-aircraft capability with the units they have, so therefore the recon plane cannot be shot down. All right, so the rules also indicate that you get to activate both your German formations first. So we have our 18th Panzer and 320th Infantry formation markers removed from the cup. The cup is over here. So we will activate our Panzer unit. We have to activate one of them first. They're right here, so they can move in, obviously. So our terrain here, this is the clear terrain. So the movement cost is 1. Road movement cost is 1 and ignores the terrain around it. The rough, this is rough. This has a movement cost of 1 for soft targets, so infantry, and 2 for hard targets. So let's start off with our Panzer IVs here. So we'll go 1. Now it has a movement factor of 4, so we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to try and pull it up behind the woods and then come through the woods and attack kind of in this direction with my armor. So this guy will do the same. 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll put an ops complete on here. Now, the range of the infantry here is only a 1. So it cannot attack the armor even though it could see it. So I'm just gonna move the whole stack. So we have 2 more Panzer IVs here with the HQ. The HQ has to remain with one of the Panzer IVs. So I'm gonna actually split these up probably, and we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll put 1 here, and we'll put the other one here. And again, we'll put ops complete on them. And yeah, I should be using tweezers, but a lot of times I don't. Okay, so that would take care of the 18th Panzer. So normally that would just be the end of that. And it stays out of the cup because it doesn't go back into the cup until after the turn is over. So now we have the 320th. Now these guys are not motorized. They're foot infantry. And you can tell because here's the infantry's counter. Okay, so this is the normal side. If you flip it over, See, the white band would indicate that's its reduced side. If you had an armored infantry, which rides in an APC, they would have the APC on the other side. So like this, the Pioneer has it actually. So here's the Pioneer. And if you flip it over, you can see it's got an APC on the other side. So that's what that looks like. We do have the Stug, who is attached as well. So he's within range, even though we're off the board, he's within 4 hexes, so he's still in command range. So he's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, here's the thing, okay? They can see him, but they don't have the range to fire on him. They can see him, same thing. Their fire for a hard target is range of 1. So, now we do have an anti-tank gun here. But again, its line of sight goes through these rough hexes here, which means it's blocked because there's multiples. So he's safe there, basically, is what I'm saying. So we'll drop an ops complete on him. The Pioneers, again, there you have a movement factor of 3. So they'll just go 1, 2, 3. These guys will also go 1, 2, 3. And again, I'm doing them all together because, again, there's nobody that can reach them anyway. These guys will go 1, 2, 3, and then this one is going to, they can enter on any hex, at least as far as I can tell. So I'm going to actually move them in here. 1, 2, actually we'll move them here. So that would have been like 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2, 3. Doesn't matter. Either way, it's the same. So let me drop ops completes on these guys. And now these guys would be done as well. And now we would draw from the cup for the Soviets. Now I could have, if I had the opportunity, done opportunity fire with the Soviets on these guys. But as I mentioned, they don't really have line of sight because of the rough terrain here. So I pulled out the designated formation, but since they've activated everybody, that does me no good. So I'm just going to sit it there. So we'll draw again. This time I will draw out the 31st tank. So essentially the Russians aren't going to really do anything anyway. And I'm probably just going to move on to turn number 2. Now they could, in theory, call in their artillery. They do have that ability. But again, it's a line of sight issue, and we could do it here because there is line of sight to this unit right here. So this is an armored unit. It's a Panzer IV. So I felt like it might be more useful to use my artillery when the Germans have advanced a little further and are close. And then I might be able to, from the Soviet side, see better and drop that on them. I can also use my mines. So they have their artillery strike and 2 mines that they can use. So we're not going to do anything with the 31st tank. This is the blue band. So that's these 2 guys right here. And they basically have no line of sight anyway to the Germans and can't really do anything. I'm not going to move them because I could have placed them wherever I wanted. And so they're in the place I want them to be, basically. So we're going to draw another chit out here. And we get the 71st Guards Infantry. We'll put that there. And we'll draw another one. We're going to pull end turns out at some point. And look at that. I actually got the other Russian unit. The 3rd tank, which is the gold ones here. So as I mentioned, I wasn't really going to do anything with the Soviets. I'm just going to leave them because I'm pretty much set up. I'm saving my airstrikes. I'm saving my mines, again, for when the Germans get a little closer. All right, so the only things left in here are my recon planes and my recon plane and my end turns. So we'll pull our first end turn marker. When the second one comes out, the turn is over. So we have a 50-50 chance of the end turn or the plane, and we get the other end turn, meaning the plane didn't even come out this turn. Which is generally fine, I guess, in my opinion. All of these guys are, well, this one's not, but the rest of these 2 aren't, but these are all concealed. Well, I guess these, well, yeah, because they're behind the city. So they're all concealed. I didn't drop concealment markers on them. I can, and that would just, you know, basically be, it would just look like this. We put a conceal marker on them, which I can. I'm just going to remember that they're there, basically, only because I'm playing solo, so I know I know where everybody is anyway. I know what everybody is as well. So we are at the end of the turn. The only thing that didn't come out is the recon. Throw that back in there. So we basically didn't do a whole lot except the movement phase. Because these guys moved, there was no opportunity fire. There was no fire and move or move and fire. There was no combat range. There's no assault. None of that stuff. You'll see that stuff coming up here pretty soon. We come to the basically the marker removal phase. Removement. That's not even a word. Marker removal phase. So we will remove all of our ops complete. I'm going to throw all of these back in the cup. Okay, so a brief clarification before I continue. I removed all of the ops complete markers. Technically, you don't need to do that, and the rules actually would indicate that you probably shouldn't do that. It's kind of an old habit of mine from other turn-based games where at the end of the turn, you pull all the markers off, right? So in theory, you leave the markers on, and when a unit is activated next, you pull the markers off then. At least that's what the rules say when you get to the formation's activation. The first thing you do is you pull the ops complete and all that stuff off. So we're just going to pick it up here. It's turn 2. I'm going to remove the first formation here, and we get the 18th Panzer. So the 18th Panzer is activated. Those are these guys right here. So let's do something a little fun here and a little different. So looking at our unit here, you can see, let me show a little bit closer here. So here at the bottom, we have a 425. That is its soft target. So the 4 in there is its range. So you have what's called extended range and you have what's called reduced range. So extended range allows you to go out to twice the range of your normal range. So if he's here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, he can reach this guy right here. You can also do something called move and fire, or conversely fire and move, which allows you to move half your movement points, and you would round down. His movement factor is 4, so he can move 2 and then fire at that, and that would be 1, 2, 3, 4 within his range. Okay? For extended range, it cuts into your firepower, because the other two numbers are a 2 and a 5. So the 2 would be how many dice you roll for hits, and the 5 would be what you need to roll to hit. Let's talk about the other things you would need to do first. Okay, now in general, to be in command radius, you need to be within 4 hexes of this one, because this one's command radius is 4. It's inside the lightning bolt there. All of these are his units, subordinate units. They're all in range. If they were not in range, you would have to check to see you'd roll a morale check to see if they would be out of command. Because there's a chance that even at an extended range, they could stay in command and do some stuff. If they're out of command, then that restricts what they can do greatly. In this case, everybody's within command on both formations, so I didn't check it. But this is something that you would have to do in general in other turns. So if I were going to do a move and fire, we could go 1, moving the map, 1, 2. Since his movement is 4, 2 is half, even rounded down, because there's no fraction there. Now here, we can do a fire, and again, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and because of the degrading terrain will only block line of sight if there are 2 of them, if you have to pass through 2 of them, or more, 2 or more. So there's only 1. So he can see this unit through here. Now this unit's also in a trench, so it's going to get to roll 2 defensive dice, which infantry typically do not get to do because they don't have any inherent defensive capabilities. They're not armored. If we were to say, okay, I'm going to attack now, right? So we've determined that we do have line of sight, but because we moved and fired, our 2 hit goes up by 1, and our attack dice, firepower, goes down by 1. So we're going to roll 1 die, and we need a 6 to hit. So obviously this is more for example purposes than anything I would actually suggest as a great idea, let's say. But let's roll. We're going to roll 1d6, and we need a 6, and we got a 3. So that's not a hit. Now they would be able to, let's just say that we had somehow gotten 2 hits even though we only rolled 1 die. they have 2 defensive rolls. So you would need to roll a 5 to negate a hit. So you'd roll 2 dice. If you got a 5, that negates a hit. That basically is the way the game resolves or handles the fact that they're in a trench, so they have a defensive bonus. So what would otherwise have been a hit if they were in clear terrain becomes not a hit because they're in a trench. So that's the theory behind it. And so now that that is done, we place an ops complete on our Panzer IV, and his turn is done, but we do still have these other units here. Now the other thing we have is that designated formation chit that we saw in last turn. That would in theory give us 3 activations. We have 2 units or 2 formations, right? So in theory, you could pull it as before you've activated any of your units or either of your units. You know, basically it gives you 3 chances to activate 2 units. But in this case, we're not going to worry about that because we actually pulled the 18th Panzer's, actually pulled its chit. So it's activated, and we're going to just continue our movement here. So let's say now we wanted to move up to these woods. Okay, so woods for a hard target, which are these guys, is a 2 movement point, but they do have 4. So we could say 1, 2, 3. And then they could move, if they wanted to move into rough, they can't because that requires 2 as well. So that would be 4, 5. So they're stuck, basically. This guy could go 1, 2, 3, 4, though. So we'll do that 1, 2, 3, 4, and stop there. So these are just moves, and we're just going to drop ops complete on these guys as well. And now we have our HQ and our last Panzer. Now I want to keep everybody in range. So this guy's up here. We have this, you know, this curve essentially, right? So I could go 1, 2, 3, and then they'd all be together. Or I could even go down this way, 1, 2, 3, 4, and he would still be within command range, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's what we'll do. We'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll put them there. And we're behind the woods or in the woods. So again, no line of sight for the Soviets here, but that's going to happen pretty soon. In the meantime, though, we can put that on here and be done. And that would complete the 18th Panzer's activation. And let me put these dice down. I have them in my hand. We would then pull another chit out. And we get the Russian 71st Guards Infantry. So the green band, which is these guys right here. Okay. Now, again, they don't really have a shot. Now, we do have this anti-tank gun here, 45 millimeter, but he can attack these guys. But again, we have degrading line of sight. So even if we go this way, he has to cross this one and this one, which are, this blocks, and that's degrading, and then that's degrading. So he has no line of sight to this hex, or this one, or this one, or this one. Because no matter what, he's touching this forest here, or woods, or this woods here, and he can't see. So basically, we're not going to do anything there with any of these units. We're playing defense as the Soviets right now, so we're just waiting for the Germans to come into range, and now we're going to hit them. At least that's my strategy from the Soviet side. So now let's pull another chit and see what we get here. And we get the other German, the 320th Infantry. So we'll now move these guys up. Now, the Stug, we have to kind of consider this anti-tank gun, right? Because if we go, the road is 1. So even though it cuts through this rough here, if we go 1, 2, 3, 4, which is his full movement, he's still out of range of these infantry, but he's going to be in range of this anti-tank gun. So let's just say we're going to be bold and we're going to do it. Because again, this is mostly for play example. This isn't necessarily how I would play it if I was playing it to win. But we're just trying to give examples of various things that can happen in the game. So let's just say 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? Now, once he's here, once he moves into this, actually, in this hex, he's within line of sight because it can go straight up there. So the range for our anti-tank gun is 3 because this time we'll be using the AP stuff, which is at the top. So it's 3. He rolls 3 dice and needs a 6 to hit. Okay? 45 millimeter gun is not that big in World War II terms. Right? So he can shoot at him here, or he can wait until he's here, which really doesn't matter because he's neither way is he going to become into reduced range. So, although his range was a 3, so yeah, if the German stops here, 1, 2, 3, 4, now he has to shoot at extended range, whereas he's got a range of 6, and so next turn he'll be able to shoot at him. So that would be the wiser move, is to just say, I'm going here and stop. Now, he can do opportunity fire, but if he does, it's at extended range, not regular range. So this is a good example to show both leadership, as far as modifiers, as well as extended range. So for leadership, you see the HQ here, and it's got a die symbol with 2 pips on it. That's its leadership for combat. Come on. There we go. All right, so that's going to add 2 to its firepower. So now our 45mm anti-tank gun here, its HE firepower is a 3, so that would become a 5. Still needs a 6 to hit, and this is going to be adjusted down for the extended range as well. So we're going to get a +2 firepower modifier because of the HQ being there and being able to apply it to it, because it doesn't need, it can apply it to one of the units in the stack. The infantry is out of range or can't fire even at extended range. So how does extended range work is the next point. So this is actually an interesting one, because let's look at our anti-tank gun again. So our 2 hit number is a 6. So typically extended range will increase your 2 hit number by 1. We can't get a 7 on a die, obviously. So what it does is instead is it reduces the firepower by 1. So with a firepower adjustment up from the leadership to 5 and then back down to a 4 because of the extended range, we still need a 6 to hit. So we roll 4 dice and we need a 6 to hit. And that is how that works. So I only have 2 dice out, so I'm going to roll these 2 twice, right? So we'll roll, we got a 6, that's a hit. Now we'll roll again, and we got 2 3s. So we got 1 hit. Now we have to talk about his defensive ability. Okay, now that's over here, and it's a 3, so 3 dice, and a 5 is needed to save. So we would roll that, and we got a 6. So I don't need to roll the 3rd die. Sorry, you might not have been able to see all that. We have a 3 and a 6. So the 6 is going to cancel the hit. So basically, I'm going to mark ops complete. And then our anti-tank gun is also ops complete. And the other unit can't do anything anyway because it's out of range. So that would be the first movement for the 320th. And now they can move the rest of their units up. So if we just take our HQ and go 1, 2, 3. Now he's still basically hidden because of the rough here from this guy. And again, they're out of range. Then we have our Pioneer. Now, because they're soft targets, they can go 1, 2, 3. Because rough for a soft target is just 1 movement point. So they can go 1, 2, 3 like that. And these guys can go 1, 2, 3. And these guys can go 1, 2, 3. So, yeah. These are all infantry units, though, so they can't shoot at them, and they can't shoot back because everybody's out of range. So we're going to just mark everybody ops complete. And that would be the end of their activation. We'll draw another chit. And we get our first end turn. So that's end turn chit number 1. And we'll draw another one. And we get 3rd tank. So the 3rd tank is over here. Now I could move them. I don't really want to. So again, I'm not going to do anything with these guys. You have to activate them, I guess, according to the rules. When you pull the formation, you have to activate them. You don't have to actually do anything. But if you do say you're not activating anybody to move or conduct combat, they've chosen not to do anything. So let's pull our next chit out. And we get the second end turn. Okay, so we got a second end turn, and we had our Soviet unit, this guy right here, the 31st tank, which was not activated. So what happens in that case, we also have the scout plane, which also was not activated. If a formation doesn't activate, its owner can keep all but one end turn marker. So since we have two end turn markers, the Soviet player gets to keep one of them, okay, and it doesn't go back into the cup until the 31st gets activated. That way you're always ensured that your units will always get activated at least once every other turn. So we put one of the end turn markers back in the cup, as well as the other formations that did activate, right? And now again, what you would do is move on to turn number 3. So we'll move on to turn number 3, and then you would, if we do it the way the rules indicate, we leave all the ops complete on there until we pull the counter out, and then they get to pull those off. So that's kind of how that works. All right, so turn 3, everything that we need is in the cup. I'm gonna reach in here and pull something out. Oh, look what we get. First time appearance. All right, we are in turn 3. So die roll plus 3. If it's more than 7 or more, it goes into the, this will be its only appearance. And we rolled a 1, so that means after it's used, it can go back in the cup. All right, so we have our, we have our scout plane, the Focke-Wulf 189 Uhu. And so it has the ability to range pretty much anywhere, and it removes concealment from any of the Soviet units because it's flying overhead. So this is in a rule that's specific to the Stalin's Triumph module rules. So you can see right here, recon airplanes. The scenario dictates if a recon aircraft is to be used. Recon aircraft follow the same rules as the placement of other aircraft. Place the aircraft in the cup. When it's drawn, the owning player can place it on any hex on the map. Once placed, the opponent can conduct any available anti-aircraft attacks against it. All enemy units that are concealed lose concealment for the remainder of the turn while the recon plane is in play. If the recon plane leaves the map, is shot down, all units regain concealment. Recon planes roll to see if they return the following turn before they are placed in the cup. So we've already rolled, so we know it's coming back. So I can just place it somewhere on the map, so we'll just say it's here. They do not have any anti-aircraft ability, so it basically removes concealment from everybody. Now, that isn't that big of a deal, except for the +1 defensive roll that you get for being concealed. So they don't have that. As you can see on here on the concealment marker, you can see it says +1, so that's a +1 defensive bonus. So for a tank, that would basically add 1 to the armor, or for an armored vehicle. And for infantry or soft targets, that would give them a roll that they might otherwise not have. So we draw our next chit out. And we get the 18th Panzer again. So this guy likes to come out early. Mr. Purple here. So we remove our ops complete from our Panzers. And I know they're in the south, and that there are, I believe, only 3 of them. Actually, there are 4. So we remove those, and these guys are now activated and can take an action. Now, for moving through the woods, the movement cost is 2 for a hard target. So these guys could move here for 2, and then they could go 3, 4. Or they could move 2 and do a move and fire and take a shot at this. They're in a trench, so again, the odds would be pretty dicey. The other thing is they would only be able to move here, so the range would still be 1, 2, 3, 4. And the Panzer IV's range for soft target is a 4, so they would be in range. It wouldn't be extended range, so they wouldn't have to get double dipped. But we know the firepower will go down with 1. Will go down by 1, and the 2 hit will go up by 1 to 6. But this one has an HQ, so it actually makes sense to do it. So we're going to do a move and fire. Put them here. Now, The range is 4, and they can't opportunity fire because they're still under their ops complete marker. So we know it's 4, and they're going to lose 1 to be a firepower of 1, which would be 1 die, and their 2-hit number would become a 6 instead of a 5. But because of the HQ, they get a +2, so that 1 becomes a 3. So we actually get to roll 3 dice and hope that one of them is a 6. So let's do that. So I'll roll both of these together, and we got a 1 and a 2. So now I'll just roll 1 and hope that this one is a 6. And it is. And it is. But, oh, I forgot to designate the target. So I'm designating the anti-tank gun. I forgot to mention that. You do have to designate your target. There are multiple units in this hex. We're shooting at the anti-tank gun, and you cannot target the headquarters directly. So we did get 1 hit. Now we have to roll their defensive dice. Now the anti-tank gun does not have an armor rating. It's just a gun, okay? So it's going to get 2 because we're in the trench. So he's going to roll 2 dice, and he needs a 5 or a 6 to negate the hit. And he gets a 2 and a 3. Okay, so let's talk about fate points now, because I want to kind of squeeze as much in here as possible. I'm not going to play the whole 8 turns, only because it would take like an hour and a half probably to do it with all the explaining and everything. So what fate lets you do is you can use a fate point to re-roll one of your dice at any time. That costs 1 fate point. The Soviets in this scenario have 2 fate points. They could also use a fate point to move 1 unit by 1 hex, ignoring terrain costs. They can use 1 to raise or lower the number showing on one of your own die by 1. That would not help them in this case. They could do 1 to place any hex in command, and you can do that one after you roll for command. So if they were out of command, you could re-roll it, basically. You could pay 2 to remove an ops complete, and you could pay 2 to return any just drawn marker before use to the opaque cup. So if you draw something that you don't want, you can pay 2 fate points to return it. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, that our Soviets are going to pay 1 fate point and re-roll 1 of their dice. And because they're Soviets, we're going to roll the red die and hope that we can get a 5 this time. And we rolled a 1. So we spent a fate point, which will leave them with 1. And I'm tracking that on my turn track, and I can show you that. I'll show you that at the end of the turn, I guess. So the Germans have 3, and the Soviets now have only 1. So that didn't do them any good. They did take a hit. So what the first hit does is it disrupts the unit. The second hit, if it's already disrupted, will reduce it. In the case of the anti-tank gun, there is a reduced version of it with the white band, because these are towed units. So on the back, you would have the truck that would tow it. Okay, so you don't flip this counter, you replace it with the reduced counter. But they do get a disruption, so we're going to put a disrupted on there, and I'm going to actually put them underneath the infantry. And we continue with our activation. Now, what I can do here is I can do the same thing with this guy, except he's not going to get the +2. But you know what? Let's do it anyway. So if we move him here, now again, he's going to drop down to 1 die, and it's going to need a 6. So it's dicey to be, to apply a pun there. It's going to be dicey to hit it, but we're going to try it. The range is only 3, so he's well within range. So we're going to roll our 1 white die and get a 2 and miss. So that's just going to be an ops complete. Now this guy here, he has a couple of options. We can go this way. So if we just did this, that's 2, and then 3, and then 4. And put an ops complete on him. All he's doing is moving. And then our Panzer up here will go 1, 2, and stop there. And we'll drop an ops complete on that one as well. Okay, so that is the end of the 18th Panzer's activation. We will pull another chit. And I try not to look. And you can use cards for this as well, of course. And we get our first end turn. Now, we know the Russians are holding an end turn, and that it won't go back into the cup until the 31st gets activated. So let's pull another chit. And this time we get the 71st Guards Infantry. So that's this guy right here. So his ops complete can come off. And he's now activated. Okay, so we're allowed to attempt to rally our disrupted anti-tank gun here. And so what you have to do is use the HQ's morale value, which is the green 7 here in the circle. That's its morale value. And we also get to add or subtract the leadership from the roll. So they need a 7. You roll 2d6. So we roll both dice. So we basically need a 5. So chances are good we're going to undisrupt this unit. And we got exactly a 5, which is what we need. So this unit is no longer disrupted. So now we can use it to attack one of the tanks. So we may as well do that. So we know that it has a range of 3. So that's 2, that's 3, and that's 3. And this one down here is 4, so it can't attack that one, but it can attack any of these 3. So let's pick this one since it's the closest. So its range is 3, its firepower is 3. It gets 2 additional because of the HQ, and its 2-hit number is a 6. So we're going to roll 3 dice against this guy. He's in the open, so he's not going to get any defensive bonus, but he does get 2 dice to roll to save 2 defensive rolls, and he'll need a 5. So let's roll 3 dice. We'll roll two first. So a 1 and a 5. Neither of those is a hit. Now we'll roll 1 more. And that one's a 4, so that one is also not a hit because his 2-hit number is a 6. So we don't need to roll for anything else. So that would be an ops complete on our anti-tank gun. Well, that's all this formation can actually do, because again, the only units that this guy could actually attack would be armored units, because the infantry is still back and out of range. So we'll move on. We'll say that these guys are all ops complete. I'm just going to move this ops complete to the top. So the 71st is done, and we will now draw again. And we get designated formation. So in this event, I can use this to activate the 320th. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to pull my ops completes off of here. So since this is our first action, why don't we call in an artillery strike from the German side? So this is pretty straightforward. So you can call up to 2 fire missions as the first action of the HQ or recon unit of the active formation on any hex or hexes within its line of sight. So in theory, you also used the plane, I believe, because that's a recon unit, but we didn't do that. So we determine first if it's on target. So let's say we're going to attack this hex right here. So we're going to roll 1 die to see if it's on target, and if it's a roll of 2 to 6, the fire mission hits the target. If it's a 1, it's a miss. It's a 6, so it is a hit. So now the artillery fire missions affect all units in the hex. So there's only 1 unit in this hex, the infantry with its attached heavy machine gun. So we roll individually. So it affects this hex and the 6 around it. So it's also going to target this one as well. So it's around here. Okay. So it's a high explosive mission. So I'm supposed to put a barrage counter, which I did not do. Where did I put those? They're over here. So if we put that there. Okay. So we're hitting this one and all the 6 around it. These are all empty, so I won't even roll for those, but I'm going to roll twice. 1 for here and 1 for here. So we're going to roll. The German fire missions are 3 4s. So 3 dice with a 4 to hit number. So I'm going to roll 2 first. And we got a 2 and a 3, so that's no hits. So we roll 1 more die, and it's a 1. So we got no hits on our first target. Now we'll roll for here. So again, I'll roll 2, and we got 1 hit that time. And we'll roll the other dice and get a 6. So we rolled 2 hits in here. Now they get to roll defensive rolls, and they're in a city, and the city will afford you a defensive bonus of 2d6 for a soft target and 1 for a hard target. So they get 2 2d6, they have to roll a 5. And they rolled a 7. So that's one hit. One hit removed, but they were hit by 2, so they are going to be disrupted. So we will drop it. Disrupted on them. And because they're all ops complete, right? So let me remove that. I'm going to drop ops completes on these guys just because that way I'll remember that one's... I'm going to remember anyway, but let's try and keep up with the rules here. So that's how artillery works. It's very straightforward. So that was the first action by our headquarters. That leaves the Germans with 2 more fire missions. They could call in a second one. I don't think it's really worth it. So we'll just hold on to those for future turns, even though this might only be the last turn I'm actually going to play. Okay, so we're going to fire our Stug at this hex right here. His range is a 4, so 1, 2, 3. He could do a move and fire, which would actually get him close enough to do that. So maybe we do that. So we're going to move him up 1. And his movement factor is a 4. I could actually move him up again, but I think I'll stop here. So we're going to stop here and we're going to fire. And because the range is 2 and his range is 4, that's half. We get a reduced range. So the 2 hit number is going to be reduced by 1. It's going to actually be increased by 1 because we did a move and fire. So it's going to wash and it's going to be a 5. We're also going to lose a die. So we're going to roll 2 dice, needing a 5 to hit. So we'll do that right now. And we're attacking there's only 1 unit in there. It's infantry. We rolled a 1 and a 4. So that's no hits anyway. But if we had hit, there's only 1 unit in there. You have to designate your target. I did not do that. But as I said, there's only 1 unit in there. All right. So now we'll move on. We'll move up our HQ and our infantry here. And again, they have a movement factor of 3. And the firing range for the infantry is 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe they'll fire at this guy instead because they do get the +2 bonus for the headquarters. So let's do that. So we will fire at our trench, which again gives it the defensive roll of 2. So these guys are going to fire. So the range is 2. So this is, again, extended range. So extended range is going to make their 2 hit number a 6. It's a 5 right now. So they'll get 4 dice and need a 6 to hit. They don't have any defensive bonus aside from the trench. So we roll 2 dice, and then we'll roll 2 more. We need a 6. We got a 4 and a 3 on our first roll. And on our second roll, we got a 4 and a 5. So good rolls, but not good enough. Ops complete. Now let's move our pioneers up. So they're going to go 1, and then they'll move into the rough. Well, you know what? We need to be aggressive, I think. So we're going to go, well, they have that machine gun there. Yeah, we're going to just go 1 and then 2, 3 and end up in this rough right here. And that will be their movement. This is not an easy one because we have to capture the bridge and take 2 of these hexes on that side. And so far we haven't even cracked the town and we're on turn 3. So then these guys will move up. That's 2. And we'll send them here because I want to keep them in range. Well, they would be in range up here too. I'm nervous about this machine gun, but you know what? Casualties happen, right? So 2, 3. We'll stop there. Ops complete. And then these guys will go 2, 3 as well. Ops complete. And that will complete the 3/20th, by using the designated formation there. So now we'll pull again. And we get 3rd tank. So we got 3rd tank. We didn't get the 31st, so they're still inactivated. So now we have the 3rd tank. We have 1 unit here, or 2 units here, 1 reduced T-34 and 1 full strength. We have 2 T-34s here and the 1 T-34 in the headquarters there. The question now is, do we want to do anything with these tanks? Do we want to push the Germans, or do we want to sit back? My strategy all along has been to sit back, and then if the Germans get into the town, then we'll push up. So they're not going to do anything. We'll move on to the next formation, the next chit. It is 3/20th. This would be the Germans. They've already activated everybody, so we'll just leave that out. There's one chit left in the cup. It is the 31st tank. That was the only one we hadn't seen yet. So let's, wow, we are not focusing here. There we go. 31st tank. All right. Autofocus is bugging out on me here. All right, so that is the last unit. We can throw the other end turn in there, but it's really not necessary because we're just going to pull it anyway. That is literally there are literally no chits left in the cup. So that end turn would go in the cup and we'd pull it out right now. One thing I didn't show was mines, and I should have done that, and I forgot. But we're going to move on real quick here. So with our T-70s here, we could actually try and do something. So let's do something just for, well, you know what? No, we won't. We won't. We're going to sit tight. So that's going to end the turn. We're going to go to turn 4 and put all the chits go back in the cup, including both end turns, because that was the end of that turn. So all those guys go back. These guys go back. And we start turn 4. So I'm actually going to stop here. I'm going to stop here for length. And I do want to play more of this. So what I might do is, there's a campaign in here that I mentioned earlier towards the back. And it's right here called Death Ride of Das Reich. So you play through the scenarios and you kind of determine, like, things will stick around based on how you do, and you can purchase things with points and so on. So that's a really neat feature of this game, and I think I'm going to do that as a separate thing. So that'll come later on, perhaps before the Platoon series is totally complete, because I do like to mix things in. So if you do want to see more of this game, because I'm going to stop here, I will do that sometime in the not too distant future, hopefully. We will do this campaign, and you'll get to see some of the other things, like assault, and, you know, there's a whole lot more in here. Smoke, there's all kinds of stuff in here that we didn't get to. So we're going to get, like I said, I wanted this to kind of be an overview where you could see the game, kind of get the basic mechanics, and go on from there. So that will do it for this. My name's Joe. This has been Hexed Countered. I do appreciate you guys watching. Please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing, or leaving a comment. I'd like to chat if you wish to. I would be happy to reply. But until next time, happy gaming.